Make you smile every single day or morning when you wake up and there's a little bit extra earned and you've done absolutely sod all to get it because you've earned it whilst you were sleeping. Amortization, bit of a difficult one to say that. So today we're going to look at how you could buy Apple for a tenner. I know everyone's going to say, oh, well, it's not £10, is it? But wait a minute, I'm going to show you how you can buy shares in Apple for £10 and you'll get a thing called what's called a dividend payment, where they actually pay you a small amount of their profits. But before we do that, I thought we would do this video off the back of another video that we did with one of our podcast guests, where basically we talked an awful lot about investments and future planning and the rest of it. And it just made me kind of think about things, about how back in the beginning of my journey where I wanted to invest in stuff and I wanted to do various things with my pensions and stuff like that, I didn't really understand what I was looking at. So I thought today we'll start with the fact that most people just stick their pension, they get their company pension, they whack it in and they just pay their 5% and their employer pays their 3%, and that's kind of what they do, and that's that. And they don't really understand where it is or what's going on with it or whatever. But as a general rule, whilst I can't give you financial advice, and this is for educational purposes only and for entertainment and the rest of it, but as a general rule of thumb, most people just stick their money in and they have got no idea on the scale of the risk that actually that money is being invested in. And as a general rule, the company that your company will use will probably put it in a very low risk thing, and you might have a higher risk tolerance, or maybe you don't even understand that. And there's a compound growth effect, which we can touch on in other videos, but essentially the longer you are in the market, the further your investments will grow. So it's a compounding effect. I think there was somebody that made a reference to about putting a grain of rice on every single bit of the checkerboard of a set of checkers, or chess even, checkers, chess, whoever, I don't know, whichever way you call it, chess. So you put a grain of rice on everyone, but you double the grain of rice every single time you move along the chessboard. And by the end, you've got something like, I don't know, it's in the hundreds of millions or billions even, maybe, I'm not sure. But basically, that is a compounding effect. So if today I loan you a tenner and it's 10%, tomorrow it's £11. Then the next day it's 10% on the £11, not 10% on the £10. So there's a compounding effect. And most people don't understand that at all. They don't teach it in schools or anything. So hopefully this is going to teach you how you can actually buy stocks and shares for your future and the rest of it, or invest some things. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at one of my portfolios, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what I've been doing and also how you can get on that journey. So let's get stuck in. So if you're completely new to the world of investing and you don't understand it whatsoever, think about your credit card bill. So you get your credit card and every single month there's a bit of interest on it and you feel like it's a never ever ending battle to pay that down. You pay it off and it only clears off the interest, and the actual principal balance, the thing you borrowed in the first place, is hardly ever effective. Or what if you were the credit card company and you earn that money instead? But you don't have to be a credit card company. What you can do is just invest your money, and the compounding effect works in reverse. So there are many different types of pension providers, investments you can use, companies. You can have a look at online self-invested pensions called SIPs in the UK. This is generally UK specific, but it does apply to pretty much anywhere in the world because most governments run very similar systems, but obviously check your local area. Basically, you go online and you have a choice. You can either use your traditional pension manager, or come to you probably in a tie and a suit and talk to you about your pension and invest it for you. You tell them what the risk is and then you just leave them to it, which is very good for most people who probably don't really understand what they're doing, and they will that pension will be invested into some sort of risk profile. But the problem with that is they often charge you a fee for doing that, which could be a percentage of your pension pot. So for example, if they charge you 5% for handling and growing your pot, and you've got £100,000 in there, they're going to charge you £5,000, which means you've got to at least make £5,000 or 5% profit or return on your investment in that year just to cover their fees. So it can be quite a tall order to get your portfolio to grow. Now in some years it will outpace their fees, other years it won't. So you just really need to be careful with that if you're not going to go down that route. But what we're going to be talking about today is if you want to do a self-invested pension scheme or run ISAs or anything like that yourself, and you're actually going to take that mantelpiece on and take control of your own finances. So I use a platform called Vanguard, which I'll just turn on the screen recording for you here so you can see what I'm looking at as well in more detail. And basically this screen recording here will show you this Vanguard as a website. Now there are lots of other ones. I just choose to use Vanguard because I think their fees are pretty low and they are a massive company, and they kind of basically just, you know, go into, you know, that kind of mass market, if you like. They're really the originals. Now, as you can see on here, I've redacted some of the information so you can't see my passwords and the rest of it. But Classic, it's had to send me a one-time passcode because you can't get into anything nowadays without that. So here you can see that my account with Vanguard is split into various different sections. So at the top here you've got my pension section, which you can see there's approximately 45 grand in there, and then I have an ISA which has got about £30,000 in there. And then you can see the returns at the side here. So on my pension, 53% of it is actual return, so this is the green section here, and 45% on the ISA. So in theory, what we've got here is that out of the £30,000, 45% of it is actual returns from the stock market. Now you're going to query this because at the side here it says £10,000, which all we know is not 45% of 30 grand, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So this is the platform that I use. Now down here are my children's ISAs, because you can set junior ISAs, and also my wife's ISA and pension as well. So we won't look into those, but you can see you've got an ISA allowance of around £20,000, or it is £20,000 in the UK per year. That means you can put £20,000 into an ISA without paying tax on any of the profits that you get. So if your ISA returns you 10% share, 10% return, and it's now £22,000, you don't pay tax on the £2,000 profit that you've made because it's in this tax wrapper of an ISA. Pensions are very similar, except for pensions are deductible at source. So the difference between ISAs is you've already paid tax on that money, you stick it in the pot, and then you get a return and you don't pay tax on the return. Pensions, you don't even pay tax in the first place, you put it in the pot, but what you do pay is you pay tax when you draw it back out. It means that if you're a higher rate taxpayer now, you'll probably pay less tax on it when you draw it out because you'll be a lower tax rate payer. So that's the kind of difference between post-tax and pre-tax for the ISA and the pension. Now with pensions, you also are allowed to draw out 25% lump sum with no tax on it. So if you've got £1 million in your pension, you can draw £250,000 out, no tax whatsoever. The remaining £750,000, as you draw it out in any one year, so if you draw 10% out every single year, you're going to end up paying some 40% tax on it. But hopefully you won't need as big an amount to live on when you're older as you do perhaps when you're younger and you have a family. But these are really easy to set up. You just go in, you set up an account, they want your national insurance details, all the rest of it. They also give you a free, or all of them do, not just Vanguard, but they give you a free transfer of your existing pensions. So if you've got multiple pensions from different jobs and things, then you can actually go around and you can convert all of these pensions into one place. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, roughly speaking, how you would go ahead and buy a stock. So on the screen here, we go buy here like that, and then you have this screen here where it says your buying options, next available or live price. So you can buy next available, which is whenever Vanguard decide in the day that's going to be the point of the day that they are going to buy the stocks. You might have missed it on that day, and so therefore it might be the following day. Or you can do live price. So if there's something crazy going on in the market and you really want to cash in on it, you can pay extra to buy the stock right now. or it's free if you buy it whenever Vanguard is. I'm pretty sure the other platforms offer the same sort of service. We're going to do next available price in this instance. So here you've got now this empty basket, and you can do add more investments, really simple. And then you've got these four categories of types of funds that you can buy with them. So you can do cash, which is simple cash. You can do blended funds, which is a mixture of various things. So they call these equity and target retirement funds, as you can see down here. Now the little blue thing here, key investor information, gives you a little bit of information on what each one holds inside the stock. So they're like baskets of stocks, and that little blue information pack at the side there gives you some information on exactly what's in there and the risk profile here. So you can see this one I've clicked on is a risk profile of 4 out of 7. So it's kind of medium on the risk scale, I suppose. So going back over to there, so you can look at all of those ones and you can study them. Now, these target retirement ones are designed so that you would say, I'm going to retire in the year, let's say 2050, and you might buy that fund. So it would be more risky now, and then what it does is it automatically changes the risk profile down as you get near your retirement age. So they're quite popular, them. And again, you see here where it says 20, 40, 60, 80 and 100% equity on this particular bit here. They are about how much equity or bonds you have. Bonds are like government loans, and then you get a fixed interest rate for them. Equity is like equity in companies, so like shareholding. So the higher the equity is, you could argue the riskier it is. More bonds are less risky, but the returns aren't as good. So again, read those little blue key investor information tickets, and they will give you some information on exactly what is inside the fund and its risk profile. Again, equity funds you've got here, so they're split into continents. So obviously you've got Europe, you have global funds, you've got the UK in here, Asia Pacific, emerging markets, and the US as well as in there. And for example, a lot of people you'll hear, they have the S&P 500. It's a very popular stock. So that is a basket of the most 500 biggest or well-performing companies in America. So you can see here there's accumulating and distributing the S&P 500 here, and again you can see what exactly is entailed in those when you click on the key investor information. The most popular one, or the one that I invest a lot of our money in, is the S&P 500 distributing, because that gives you a dividend payment. It's a share of the profits of these companies. And that's VUSA, V-U-S-A. And one of the good things is you should be able to look that up on your telephone. You know that little app in the corner at the top that no one ever uses, the stock market jobby, that everyone deletes when they get their phone. That's where you find that information so you can track it during the day. I know no one literally ever uses that, but if you do now, because you're going to be an investor. So again, you can see here the S&P 500. Which is the VUSA fund, and that is a 6 out of 7 on the risk factor, because obviously companies fluctuate and so on, but the S&P 500 is generally given a fairly good return. If you look at the historics of it, you can Google them and have a look on the internet, and it will give you some deeper information as to exactly past performance. But obviously past performance is no indication of future performance. But it is the 500 biggest companies in America. And even if you don't believe in the American market, you've got to remember that if something drops off the end, so they become non-profitable, then something else will replace it. So it's unlikely that 500 companies, or the biggest 500 ones, are also going to go bust, as well as the hundreds of thousands that don't fall into the S&P 500. So when you say we're going to buy some stocks in here, now at the moment they're trading for about £80 a share. So you need to put in at least £80 because you have to buy a whole share. So as you see, I've typed in £100, which I'm going to buy in the S&P 500 here. And then basically you will see that when I purchase that, it will actually only give me £78 or £80 of the share. So the remaining £20 that can't buy a share goes into your cash pot. So you would then just go through this process. So I've now put that in there, so you can see that's in my basket. And then you go through payment method, which I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with the payment methods and so on, but by now you would have already signed up with your national insurance number and the rest of it, so that bit should be fairly simple. You have a choice, as you can see on this screen, how would you like to fund this? So you could put your debit card in, or you can use the existing cash. So say every time you put £100 in, there's actually only £80 for the share. You might accumulate a little bit of cash. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to do the cash so that you can't all see my credit card details, or my debit card even, can't pay on a credit card. So you can see here I'm using the existing cash to purchase this particular share of £100, although I know as of today, because I can look on my phone and remember, I can tell you that they're trading for £80.71 on this particular day, whatever that is in time. This will probably really date the video, so it's in 10 years time it'll be about 150 quid per share. So I can then just press submit, and then you'll see that just takes a moment there whilst that is all going through. So there you go. So I've now converted £100 of the cash that I had into a stocks and share, and it will buy it whenever Vanguard are ready, because remember I didn't click on the buy it now part of it. So that's a brief overview of how easy it is to buy that. Now you need to look at those blue investor sheets on the side, and each platform will have their own kind of, system for that or whatever, but it's there. And in a way, not to kind of undo the hard work of all those fund managers, that's kind of what they're doing for you. So that's what you're paying your money for. So if you've got a healthy pension pot of 100 grand, if you want to save yourself 5% fees or whatever they might charge you, it's well worth trying to do this for. People get very confused with self-invested pensions. They think that they're going to lose it all or whatever. Just keep it really, really simple. Buy baskets of funds, ETF, even use those retirement target age ones. And the irony is buying those target retirement age ones, the irony behind them is exactly what your hedge fund manager or your pension manager will be doing for you. So one thing that we didn't touch on was the fees basically that Vanguard charge. So on that investor sheet, it does say what the fees are. And if you go into them, you can have a little look, and we'll just have a quick little look at one now to give you an example of how much or how much less the fees are here. So you can compare the say 5% that your pension fund manager would be charging you to say the Vanguard one, where you can look on the investor sheet and you can see what the ongoing charges are for actually for managing that fund or for buying the stock essentially. But the good thing with Vanguard, and I think they do it on other ones, is that when you get to a certain amount of equity that you hold with them or a cash balance, is they don't charge you a fee anymore. So they have their own fee, which is like 0.005% for managing it, and then they have like a fund fee. So the S&P 500 is actually one of the higher charging ones, and it's 0.07. So you can see it's less than 1%, whereas your typical kind of larger pension provider would be charging you probably nearer to 5% for management. So it's quite a lot cheaper, and that's only on the funds that you hold in the S&P 500. It might be cheaper elsewhere. You might be thinking, well, that's all good, we've got this nice thing, but what if I want to be a little bit more risky or vogue or whatever, and actually invest some money directly in a company and go right back to the title of this video, how to buy Apple for a tenner. So let's have a look at that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at how you can buy an individual stock. So I'm going to use my phone, because a lot of these places in America, you've got Robinhood, they're pretty big. You can get them outside of America, you can get them in the UK and so on. You've got Trading 212 in the UK, you've got Free Trade. There's loads of different places that you can buy stocks and shares from, but I'm going to show you how you use Free Trade here. So basically on the screen now, you'll see that you just go in and you basically search Apple in the top here. Now the beauty of someone like Free Trade is that you can buy what they call fractional shares. So you don't actually have to buy a full share in Apple. So you can see today's price for Apple on the screen here is $222. It's obviously in an American calculation, because when you buy it in pounds, it then converts it back, and they do charge you a little bit for actually doing that conversion rate. But I would say currently, if you go into there and you go to buy one share, as you can see on the screen here, and we do £200, that would buy us 1.17 shares. So if we do 190, you're going to get closer to one share, maybe £180. So you can work out roughly what one share is going to actually be in Apple. So £180 or $220 in today's exchange. Now you can see I've only got £3.50 in the account, because I don't tend to leave cash balances in there because they don't particularly return very well. But the beauty of this is you can actually just buy £10 worth of Apple, which is 0.0588% of Apple. So it's what they call a fractional share. So you're only buying like a bit of the share. So you can buy a bit of Apple for £10. So that's how you actually buy Apple for a tenner. I know you're not buying all of it or whatever, but you can buy that. And this is a very similar sort of thing, but there's instant buy power. So you buy that, and as long as the American market is open, bearing in mind they're like 7 or 8 hours behind us or whatever. So I think here the market closes at about 2 o'clock in the UK. So as long as you buy it before 2 o'clock, it will go through within seconds of you pressing the order. They'll charge you a small conversion rate, and then you can see here on this little screen at the bottom, there's a stats bit of it, and you can see that Apple pay a dividend or yearly dividend of 0.45%. So what they will do is they will pay you 0.45% back of the profits based upon how many shares you have. So it's not a big amount, as you can see from mine. I think I held £4,000 and they paid me a fiver, and that would have been a quarterly probably payment. So I'm getting like £20 a year out of my £4,000. So not exactly a very exciting return in that sense, but what you can see on here, which is really good on these graphs, so you can see if we go to the max view over here, so I can slide my finger along, and this is still recording for you guys. So right here, this is the coronavirus bang dip, and you can see if I'd have bought absolutely shed loads of Apple right then, it was $56. And now here we are in 2024, approaching the 5-year anniversary of COVID. It's now $222. So if I'd have bought a whole load at 50, I would have, what's that, 3 times my money by now? So I'd have 3x the money that I'd put in. I put in £5,000 and I'd have £22,000. You will never get that kind of return anywhere other than in an individual company. But if I then compare that to, say, Lucid, who were a company that I did buy some shares to, who are also a tech-based company, Lucid Motors, you can see here that if you go on the max, you can see that they burst into the stock market, and then they went up to a whopping $50 a share when they were at about 20, but right now they're trading at $3 a share, or $3 for, well, just shy of $4 a share. So you can see, obviously over a long period of time that has crashed down, so depending on when you bought that. So that is like, if you're comparing on the Vanguard baskets of funds like the S&P 500 and you're thinking, oh, that's a 6 out of 7, or, you know, high risk or something like that, in comparison to this is like a 30 or more. So buying individual stocks, you're completely reliant upon the company performing. Bigger the companies are and the more historic they're going to be, then, you know, the more likely they're going to probably give you a nice return, but it's not going to rocket to the moon as people like, hashtag diamond hands and all that sort of stuff on Reddit. Yeah, I think things like Tesla, obviously they've done very well, but they've come back down again, but they are few and far between. Most people are better off just doing baskets of funds because they don't have the time to keep on the market, look on their phone and do all that sort of stuff. So I hope that's really useful for everybody. If you want to sign up for Free Trade, it's a free app. You just sign up and do that. They do the ISA, they do the pension. They also do a general investing account as well. So if you're lucky enough to have maxed out your pension or your ISA and you still want to invest money, you can do with them. but they don't, obviously that's not tax free, any gains that you put on those particular investments. So I hope that's really useful. If you've got any questions at all, just put them in the comment below. I love this kind of stuff. Like, it's really different. Like, people probably know me from being like involved with property and business and the rest of it, but this is a really, really good way of building kind of long-term wealth and getting stuff. And as you will see on the original one, the Vanguard, where I said it's like 45% profit return, and then there's £10,000. It's because I've drawn some money out of it and put some money back in, and the return, the way it works, the return is not quite as simple. So if, like, at 1 minute I might have had £100,000 on it and it's given me a whopping return, I then take some of that money out, but that actual profit is still locked in there. So you can see that there's, you know, £10,000 of that £30,000 is actual profit that's probably been gained over a longer period of time. But it's £10,000 that I did absolutely nothing for, other than just believed in the American stock market, I suppose. But, you know, that's just me. Everyone's risk profile is different. So a lot of people get really, really daunted by signing up for all of these things, and it's like kind of crazy, and I don't know, I'm going to lose it, and I don't know what I'm doing or whatever. But there was a time where you signed up for emails, and you made your first transaction on Amazon or whatever, and you thought that everyone was going to steal your bank account details or run away with your firstborn child because you touched the internet. Pensions and investments and ISAs and stuff is just, that people feel like that's the same thing, but once you've done it, you'll be really, really at one with it, and you'll understand it, and you'll see the compounding growth effects, and it'll make you smile every single day or morning when you wake up and there's a little bit extra earned, and you've done absolutely sod all to get it, because you've earned it whilst you were sleeping. If you want to know any more about this kind of topic, and you want to read up about it or listen to an audiobook in your car, real good recommendation is The Richest Man in Babylon. That is all about compound interest in investing and actually becoming richer than perhaps your counterparts without them even knowing about it. And then you've got the Cash Flow Quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki, who's Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's all about assets as well. It's a really good book for general knowledge to it. And then you've got loads and loads of books on Vanguard and the whole theme about why the fees are low and what they do with things, and how they kind of take on those hedge fund managers, if you like, or pension providers, in terms of their fees and the way they do things and baskets of funds. Yeah. Feel free to comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. Hopefully it's a slightly different video and spurred off of a podcast we had, and I thought it was a really good introduction for anybody that's interested in this kind of topic, and a bit of a tag on for Helen's podcast. So see you in the next video.